and that's how I got invited to work in the project as an external resource person. Okay, and over to you, Sangeeta. First, she's going to tell you about the project and of drafting the handbook on global citizenship education for teachers. So it's also actually added of higher education, really, in a way. So we are not. So it's for the teachers. Teachers will be teaching the students in the classroom.
The outset to Mosmi ma'am, and she has been a great asset, and she has been should I say, leading also the project in a very big way. And when we started this idea of global citizenship education handbook, basically let me share how this whole idea started. There was one training in Asia Pacific, training for global citizenship education and education for international understanding at Seoul in 2017, which I was a part of. And when I came back, and as a part of training, they wanted also a commitment of, leading similar endeavors back home. So I thought of how to take it forward in our own country so as to make a difference in how we take up teaching and learning, keeping in mind these core principles of GCED as also the pedagogical processes. So I started thinking about this project, and when I was looking at this project, then I was also reading the this national curriculum framework, which talks so much beautifully on all aspects which are a part of GCED. They're all familiar with the themes of GCED, are they? So, but very quickly, I would not talk about, since we have limited time to speak, I would not talk about this interconnectedness of the world. We all know that we are a part of this flat world and how immensely we are interrelated and interdependent. So I would just, this is what this globalization has led to. And I'm just skipping this because I just want to come to the main issues that is what is in the handbook and how it addresses issues. So I just yeah. So this is what aspects of GCED include primarily. That is building a culture of peace, sustainable development goals, promoting inclusive education, respect for multiculturalism, gender equality, attaining social justice, education about human rights, and also education about digital citizenship. So when I was exploring that how can we embed it at school level, right from classes, say, so to speak, class 1, but then we were concentrating on class 6 to 8 to begin with, and then probably we can move up to classes 9th and 10th in the second phase. So when we were exploring these dimensions of peace, multiculturalism, gender equality, and were looking at our own textbooks, I come from NCERT, so we were looking at our own textbooks and the national curriculum framework. So we could see in the national curriculum framework, these issues are integrated, embedded, immensely talked about. There's so many position papers that have come out on sustainable development and also on peace education and multiculturalism and how it has to be taken in the class. So the main responsibility here of coming up with a handbook and kind of proceeding with what we want in the handbook was how to bring all these themes together and also to see in the content, that is whether it is social science, whether it is maths, whether it is science, whether it is languages, how do teachers take their classes so as to kind of embed these principles of GCED, these themes of GCED, plus what are the pedagogical processes that they should be using, including the IT assimilation, and also what are the areas of learning that should be concentrated upon. So GCED critical 21st century critical thinking, 21st century skills as in critical thinking, problem solving, how does pedagogical process address that? And secondly, how does it address the 3 domains of learning, that is the cognitive, socio-emotional and behavioral. So this was the whole idea of coming up with a handbook. So we mapped the entire social science textbooks to see where are the reflection in the lessons of these themes that I'm talking about, peace, multiculturalism, and so forth. Then we came up with, the idea of developing more content on this so as to give an idea to the teachers as to what is basically the essence of peace education, or how peace is so important to be taken up in the classes. Similarly, human rights, what are the various aspects, because we assume that maybe a teacher does not have any understanding. So giving a general outline of a particular theme and also some case studies related to human rights, peace, gender inequality within this first part of our handbook. So we have divided the handbook in 3 parts. The first part talks about what is the importance, why we are doing this global citizenship education, what are the various components, and the second part talks about these themes. So it's these themes and also a little understanding very briefly to the teacher, so that they do not get demotivated if the content is huge. So it is just a kind of enriching them on these aspects. The third part of the handbook is wherein we have mapped entire social science textbooks and suggested pedagogical processes for integration of GSET, and we have also identified what GSET competencies can be built through those lessons, and also we've suggested pedagogical processes. Then in the next part of the third part, we have also talked about certain exemplars from all disciplines: English language, Hindi language, science, maths, social science, and shown through our exemplars as to how these GSET competencies through these lessons can be integrated. If you want, I can show you an exemplar maybe on how we have approached that. Would you like to see that? So these were the principles that I was talking about, pedagogical principles, that multimodal, value formation, holism, dialogue and participation, critical empowerment, and it should be applicable and relevant. So does my lesson plan address all these areas? That is a very important question that teachers must be asking. Now, I will take an example from a nation in the making that I have used. This is with reference to class 7th. So in class 8th, we start off talking about the formation of national consciousness and the Indian National Congress. What role did it play in giving the shape to the idea of nation, which was not, we believe, prior to the coming of British, not existent in India, right? So then when we talk about Indian National Congress, what are the kind of questions that the teacher should be asking the learners in order to promote critical thinking? So then they talk about what were the early demands of the Congress and how does it bring out the following as a opening dialogue between to the learners by the teachers. So are they able to think in terms of how British rule was fundamentally racist and how through the administration this racism was promoted? For example, the division in the army, can we see it as a form of racism, wherein an Indian could not be promoted beyond being a subedar, or even Indian civil services for that matter, where the age was lowered and the exams were held only in England, where an ordinary person in India could not qualify even graduation at the age of 18 and then going and writing an exam in England. So how does this governance promote racism? So these are some typical questions which should trigger off a thinking process amongst the learners. And then how did the Indian National Congress demands represent that? Yes, it was representing a fight against injustice for all classes across all sections. So then here I've written a little note for the teacher that the British considered Indians inferior. So as facilitators, we can encourage learners to collect more information in present context. How do we relate these 3 aspects of injustice or racism and participation in governance? How do we connect? So in today's context, how are the national resources siphoned? Who, as a part of being the citizen of the country, what is rightfully my share in national income? And where are these national resources siphoned? Are they going in for the building up of our primary infrastructure, as in education, as in health for all, or are we spending it at some other places which may not lead to maybe, development of maybe the marginalized and also the poorer and weaker sections of the society. So when we shift from a colonial administration to a democratic administration, is it only the nomenclature that changes, or have we actually been able to form a society which is above the one that we were experiencing, and to what extent, and if not, then what needs to be done? So these are some kind of things that teacher needs to talk to the learners in order to link the past with the present, and also to draw interconnections and interrelations between governance and good governance, and maybe the subjects, the rulers and the rules. Maybe, history not just teaching about what happened in the past, but maybe, drawing a parallel in today's context becomes very fundamental. So I've written here how a nation's wealth was drained in the past and how it gets drained today, and how a balance needs to be made. I'm talking here also in the form of MNCs who've come in and who are siphoning off a large part of India's wealth. So then, how is Indian National Congress also instrumental in giving courage to the Indians to represent or fight for and raise their voice, to make their voice heard, right? So it should be a reminder for us also not to take what is given to us, laying back, and fight for our rights. So how do we promote all these values amongst our learners? Can be done through a history lesson, or could be a geography lesson, or could be a political science lesson. So what would happen in the process is critical inquiry, problem solving, and thinking rationally, think multiple perspectives. That is what we call 21st century skills. And very importantly, this will only happen when correct pedagogical processes, for instance, a group discussion, a brainstorming, maybe a research-based method has been assigned to the learners, where we make them work in groups, so that are they able to listen to the viewpoint of their peer group and respect it also. So we are, in a way, in the classroom processes, promoting multiculturalism and also democratic dialogue, and also communication skills, and also respect for others' point of view, empathy, and so forth and so on. So when we are taking a history lesson, it is keeping so many points of view in mind that we should be talking. Here I've taken an example from science, because as I said, it is interdisciplinary, that it is not only focusing on how social sciences, because social sciences immensely provide an opportunity for embedding all the themes of GSET, but it is not just social sciences which provides these opportunities, but beyond, even science does it. So science, for example, we have a lesson in class 7th, which is sound and noise pollution. So we try to identify what are the aspects which relate to GSET, and we can very well see that sustainable development and pollution and its impact on humans, not only humans, other fellow creatures who also have equal right on this planet Earth that we are sharing with them. So then what are the pedagogical processes? That they could be any video, any discussion, any debate like the one that I had planned to show, but since we are on a tight schedule, I would skip those videos, right? And then what are the domains of learning?
You can still show some, because we have time till 8:30.
I think towards the end, when everybody has spoken, it would be justice, because since all should get an
I will speak the least, because I'm the in-house person.
There should be equality in sharing time also, and I should have empathy for the next speaker and do not steal and rob into the time. So I would limit myself, and please remind me when it's time for me to wind up. I'll just cut short, because this is my baby, so I can go on the whole night talking about it, but I wouldn't like to do that. And I just want to make a point here, and if that point comes across, is taken, I think that's all I intend doing. So the various domains of learning that we're talking about is not only cognitive, of knowledge related to a particular subject, but also socio-emotional and behavioral. By socio-emotional is, again, like I said, empathy towards your fellow beings and creatures, and concern and responsibility sharing. That is of the heart, right? and cognitive is predominantly of the mind, and behavioral is taking responsibility and doing something about it. How does a transformation happen in my learners as a result of what I have done as a part of my classroom process? And it is very difficult to assess and evaluate the behavioral and the socio-emotional. And it is very difficult to be a facilitator, and it is very easy to be a teacher. So a facilitator would have rubrics for, group discussion assessment or maybe debate assessment. So when the group is involved in working on a particular assignment that the teacher has given, the teacher in a very subtle manner observes the social dynamics of how the group actually operates and then prepares a kind of a feedback in a very positive manner, goes and tells the learners individually in a very positive feedback that you have very good qualities of, leadership, but a leader must also, if the child is very assertive and doesn't listen and keeps speaking in the group, then the teacher can mold and train by positive counseling as to where are the gaps and therefore help in socio-emotional and the behavioral. So next time when she's conducting a similar kind of activity, then the teacher again has rubrics and actually observes the learner as to whether there is a change in the behavior or not. So that is why I'm again saying these pedagogical processes are not just to be done technically, so to speak, but actually to be carried out in a way wherein a teacher sees. I know this is not a teacher education institute, but I'm just talking about this because as teachers, this handbook is for the teachers. So what is our expectation of the teacher while she's using this handbook? So this is an example that I've given here, that when we are talking about sound, we could also relate to what is the difference between sound and noise, and how noise is actually leading to certain problems, even interpersonal relations to that extent. Because our mind is so clustered, because of the noise, there is these problems of, tinnitus, do we call it, and then we become irritable. When I was in Korea, this workshop that was going on, Seoul, there was a very beautiful dramatization through role play, dramatization of the entire episode of war taking place in Seoul. When there was conflict between North Korea and South Korea, US started coming in a very big way, and they started planting and having their air bases at various parts in Seoul. And this role play depicted how there was a change in the social and cultural life of a particular place because of the way this army and air force had moved in. It was so noisy, people could not hear each other, and they were becoming very irritable. And that lady who was carrying a baby, and she used to sit in a boat and just feel relaxed, she got so frightened when these planes would practice, and there would be practice of bombing as well. So what kind of impact do all these things, wars lead to, and preparation of war leads to, can be talked about. Noise pollution that I was referring to can lead to, a very, very detrimental effect on humans. And even we know that what is happening to the marine life, there are certain sounds that the marine life has that play an important role in even their reproduction, because there's communication going on, and it's all disturbed because of the noises that we have produced in the sea also. So when a teacher is talking about sound and noise as a concept in science, how beautifully she can connect it to the actual realities that difficulties that we are facing. And that again draws our attention to the need of creating a more peaceful society, which is not driven by the cry for war and more militarization and stuff like that. So in science, how can we link, sound, noise to peace, the importance of peace and the implications of war, and etc. That is my point. So it is not only in this that we can talk about, we could talk about climate change, we could talk about deforestation, and so many other things. This I would just you could have a look, and we are talking about soil conservation and also how.
To wrap up?
Okay, yeah. So similarly, I have done a training for teachers from Maharashtra, and the topic was group discussion, and they were English teachers. But then these were the topics that were given to them as a part of group discussion in their classes also. Are wars between nations inevitable? So they're again thinking about, the aspects that are covered under GSET. And when we were talking about how group discussion should be done, this was one activity in which they were given a piece of wool, and we were to see how this interaction is going on. So some of the groups came up with a very beautiful spider. That means everybody had been given almost equal opportunity to talk and listen to each other, whereas this slide you can see that it is only a few people who have spoken and the rest of them. So how does teacher ensure when she is involving the learners through creative pedagogies so that the classrooms are engaging, involved, creative and joyful? Otherwise learning is not taking place. So this is a little exercise that we did. So the handbook is talking all about what is GSET. I'm just winding up very quickly. What are the various themes under GSET? What does yes, it also talks about what are the various forums from which teachers can join and also become a part of this online campus. It also talks about the mapping of different textbooks. It gives exemplars, and then Akash has beautifully done an exercise on wherein when you're planning your lesson, you can have a checklist of what all components have been integrated in your lesson plans vis-a-vis the GSET. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sangeeta. Okay, I will now introduce our next guest speaker today, Mr. Akash Saini. Akash, do you have a PowerPoint or anything you would like?
No.
Digital pedagogy?
Yeah, that's why I'm not using it.
Okay, so he is a digital pedagogy developer at UNESCO GIB, but originally from math and science education background. So Akash is going to share about what he is doing with regards to the handbook for global citizenship education. Over to you, Akash.
Hi everyone, don't just stare with me. Okay, my contribution to this exercise was like a little late because the institute that I belong to, they closely work with teacher and students, especially school education, but some we do youth training as well in the domains of peace and violent extremism. So we highly promote the concept of GCED coming from UNESCO.
Can I interrupt here, Akash? Today in the morning I shared emailer from UNESCO MGIT actually on the hashtag campaign.
The kindness campaign.
Matters.
Yeah.
So can you tell
Sure.
something about that? Because all of them have seen that emailer.
Okay.
So I think they'll be very...
Okay.
and it actually connects to SDG and
Yes,
GSET.
yes, surely.
Absolutely.
So one of the things that we are doing is hashtag kindness matters. So what we are doing is collecting 100 stories that gets featured in a Penguin publication book, and which is going to be launched in the UN General Council General Conference that happens every 2 years in New York, and UNESCO General Conference that also happen in every 2 years in Paris. So if you are interested in that, you can also explore it through its website, because they focus a lot on doing this act of kindness, not just a forced activity, but it should come out innately, organically. So we are like focusing on that toward, but the target audience for that project is basically youth. It could be anyone, could be a student, it could be who is not enrolled in school. So majorly we found cases from like around the globe which are not the kids who are not going to school, but they have their own set of stories. So these are the kind of aspects that we are looking on, and you guys are more than welcome to share a story there. And you can find more about it on the website. You can write to me maybe. I can share with you the email of the respective person whom you can contact.
And I guess there were some school girls from Delhi involved, right, in creating the app?
I have no idea of that.
Okay, you verify and
Yeah, I'll get back to you on that. But yeah, they do this kind of intercultural workshops where they develop these kind of things. Where, for example, during the last year, there was this conference, tech conference that we organize annually. So we brought people from Mexico, and the girl who was representing a girl camp. A volunteer girl campaign. I am very bad with remembering names. So under the kindness campaign, we brought together people to work strategically to build on that community of promoting kindness and empathy and act of kindness and stuff like that. So yeah, so that's all the thing that kindness is all about. And my institute, we work closely with this concepts of GCED and socio-emotional learning. And based on that, my supervisor, which was Yoko at that time, asked me to write a chapter on mathematics, and then I contacted ma'am. Like ma'am and other people, maybe I don't have a PPT. I believe I was unprepared for that. I apologize. But so based on the work that I have done for this project, so my focus area is on mathematics education because I have a master's degree in mathematics education, and we focused in that learning how to develop resources that would help cater different students which have different needs, who have different needs, but are not being supported by existing curriculum frames and pedagogical practices in classroom. So that's how I came into MGIP, and that's when my spectrum of mathematics expanded, and I went to GCED and explored the context, how we can use these concepts more relevantly so that a learner is feeling more connected to the local issues, local livelihood and global livelihood as well. So the maths chapter that I worked on was focused on that, and we had like brainstorming session on that, how we'll structure it. And so basically, I don't know, can any one of you give an example of how we can link mathematics to GCED concept? Anyone?
how can you connect mathematics with global citizenship education?
Anyone? It's no one's judging. Like any example? Yeah.
Proper statistics, when you understand the statistics of a situation, for example, if you are calculating birth rate,
Yeah.
death rate,
Yeah.
and
Like for example, if I were to use that example in a classroom, I would say stats of refugees maybe, which comes like more organically. Refugees like migrating from one place to another, and what are their livelihood, what are their challenges, and we talked about few of that in the chapter as well. That's why I was able to communicate to that idea. But similar approaches can be used, of course, and there could be it could be like, I personally believe that you can teach anything to anyone depending on how you are able to mold your teaching methods. Like for example, you can teach stats to a sixth grader maybe, like depending on what are the measures you are taking. For example, if you want to add the concept of GCD in maths and you go into say chapter 6 where you introduce sorry, not chapter 6, grade 6, where you talked about numbers and its properties and everything. So that's one of the examples that I have quoted in the handbook. So when you talk about numbers, you can get back to the students asking like, do you know how many of them like live in a separate neighborhood or how many of them if they can draw a map or something to model out who can do carpooling or what would be the routes for buses for the students. There could be multiple of scenarios. Linear equations, you can also do it. Like for example, this is again the example that I'm quoting from the chapter. You can use linear equations for mapping the variable here is using water. So you can map the water usage in your home, in your society, and how much of it's getting wasted. not only water, you can do it with food, plastic, everything that you can think of. Then there was this beautiful article that ma'am shared with me about social justice. I was on my way here and I had a quick look on that, and it talked about a district in US, a urban district in LA, and a rural district that had less privileges of movie theater, liquor stores, that kind of again feed into your stats thing. So there are tons of materials, but what I see happening in the classroom, and I have been a teacher for like less than a year maybe, but I have taught a lot in early grades. So what I see there is people using examples of apples and pizzas. That's very much, I would say it's a very good starter, but you can't just keep on going to it, but you have to add context. For example, if you give a person a problem statement, say there are 12 oranges and you get 5 more oranges, how many do you get? It's a simple addition problem, but you can add a little different variety of context by saying in a war there were 200 people who went to the borders and only 50 came. So then again it's sorry, I mixed up the example, addition and subtractions. So I can say like similar kind of example can be built. So these are the things that helps a student to relate to a real life scenario, because as we often can talk about oranges and pizzas, but it's little hypothetical. Like for example, if you give a kid saying if you get say that go to a market where you have to buy 5 oranges and each oranges is like 1 rupees, which is again a hypothetical. I don't know if it is applicable in real life. It's just to get them started, but your job is not like stopped. It's not halted there. You have to like build upon the concept that you are already taught and try to link it with how they can have this experience in what they are learning in their livelihood, because they would able to connect more better, connect this concept better. For example, the one example I think that within our workshop ma'am raised regarding a local incident that happened in Bhopal, the Bhopal gas tragedy, and how you can link that issue with different discipline of climate change. Then you can quote stats through it. You can also go into probability. The dimensions are limitless. It's only limited by the imagination of a teacher or a resource creator or a curator, whosoever is designing the resource. So, and then, so while brainstorming all of that, I took help of Yoko and other experts that were there, because I am relatively new in GCAD. I have less than 2.5 years experience in that, and I feel myself very less when I try to work with them. And then we thought of, then again, coming from a teacher's point of view, we thought of like we can compile a whole set of books. And again, I was very critical about number of pages, because I know I personally don't read number of pages. Like if a book is like this thick, I don't know if I will read it. So I would only go through the executive summary and leave it as it is. So I was very critical of that, and I also wanted a teacher, whosoever is reading this, to have a takeaway to that classroom, because often a time whenever we read anything, we only tend to remember, like, I don't know, that's for me, for my personal opinion, that would be that I tend to forget a lot which are not important to me and which are new because I have not been practiced that. And if there is a one-pager document which would have this checklist that ma'am was talking about, a teacher can ensure that the bits of concepts or components that we talk throughout this GCED handbook can be replicable into their lesson plans. So that's where the ideology of checklist came in, and we brainstorm again. And there was this one resource person who is not able to make it here, Yamuna ma'am, who started building upon that, and we then took it forward. Me and one more colleague of mine, Renuka. So she is also from MGIP, and she works closely with dissemination of SEL into middle grade classrooms. So we came up with that, with the idea.
You probably social
Yeah, sorry. Socio-emotional, I'm so sorry. This lingo,
Some of them are from teaching background, they'll understand. Those, because this is a very mixed classroom.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
see, we have
I'm-
students from law, from law, from we have students from law, from international affairs, from public policy, and it's a very mixed group.
I'm so sorry. I often get mixed with my lingos. So SEL is socio-emotional learning, and we primarily focus on socio-emotional learning, but our overarching goal is sustainable development and achieving SDG 4.7, which is like the sustainable development we are aiming for, the goal. And I think having a particular set of people only limits our vision of achieving something, because when you have diverse people, like for example the audience here are from diverse background, we are also from diverse background. I am from maths and ma'am is from history. I don't know, ma'am, where are you from? The GCD.
Global
Yeah.
studies.
So
I think that's better.
yeah.
Education and global studies.
So the diverse opinion came, and we talked about it and we brainstormed it and how we are going to shape it. Then somewhat we came into this consensus that we should have this checklist, and we worked upon it and made it like a pager and a half. It's almost 2-pager, but it's an easy takeaway for a teacher while they are making a lesson plan. I don't know, you guys know of lesson plans, right? So lesson plan is usually one when teacher goes to the classroom beforehand, he prepares something. Usually that doesn't happen in a more government setting I have been to, like my personal classroom experience when I was being taught. So I usually don't think that teacher was prepared, and because they were reciting a thing that they have learned 15 years ago, and it was in their bloodstream now, and they don't have to like again practice it. So this checklist was supposed to give them this guide so that they can have a easy takeaway and they can make this lesson more enriching and more experiential for learner to be connected to the roots, not only local or national level, but having a sense of a global citizenship into their mind. So yeah, I think that's it.
Thank you, Akash.
Yeah, thank you. That's it.
Handbook, we had a couple of workshops at RIE Bhopal, the NCRT. Many of you must be knowing, they have their office here in Delhi, National Council for. We have also student from Afghanistan here, Rukhsar, we have a national. It's NCERT. Full form is National Council for Education Research and Training. Okay, it's a national body, and they have some region. I think there are five regional institutes of NCERT. Because India, as you know, it's so big and it's so different from one region to the other. So there are 5 regional institutes under the main NCERT office over here. So NCERT actually does research and particularly on education related matters, research and training, and community engagement and development. This has been the focus, the different pillars of NCERT's work. So how can we help in development of the nation, of the country, through educational research and training and community engagement? These are as I understand, the pillars of NCERT. So now for this project, the first thing I remember very clearly in the first workshop that we had last year at RIE, towards the end of summer and beginning of autumn, the biggest challenge was what is new about global citizenship education? We are all doing education for environment sustainability. We are doing education for peace and human rights. We are doing education for social justice. We are doing gender equity. Why an additional load for the teachers? What is the utility of global citizenship? Education itself was like a big challenge for all of us. And it was really hard to have people come on board that this is something really important. And those of you who are taking this course in global citizenship and international understanding with me, and particularly last couple of weeks, those of you who read the readings that I shared with you all, you understand that it's not an easy thing. It's not an easy task to accomplish. You have read research-based literature from different parts of the world, right? So even in countries where global citizenship education has been part of the curriculum and classroom pedagogy for a while now, it has not been an easy thing to actually accomplish it. So obviously, post-independence in our country, the focus of the curriculum, and we call it the National Curriculum Framework. The framework was to build our nation post-independence, development of the country and the national citizenship. So from there to so what we were thinking about, how can we put these things across to teachers and all other stakeholders, right? So we were discussing about all these things. We were doing this already under the National Curriculum Framework. All the components, all the GSET components that Dr. Sangeeta Petia shared with you all, they were already part of the National Curriculum Framework. Okay, we've been doing it. So in what way, how can we, what is it different than what that we are trying to propose, are trying to do, if it was already there? Okay, so that was the biggest challenge, I think, when we had the first workshop. And then slowly, as we started interacting and deliberating, we realized that all these components, we were initially framing it within the framework of the nation state, right? So with global citizenship education, we are expanding the scale of it, the conceptual scale of it, from the nation to the globe, to the earth, okay? From the local to the global. That was the first conceptual leap. And then the second one, as she already mentioned, is to highlight the interconnections and interconnectivity. I'm going to share a little bit about the chapter that I worked on, which comes out of the social and political science, social and political life text, I think class 7 or 8. I don't remember exactly class 7 or 8, NCRT, which actually deals with the issue of inequality. Okay, which is a major issue, and something which the Sustainable Development Goals also talk about, that we need to, one of the major goal is to reduce inequality. Okay, now in that particular chapter in NCRT textbook, the focus is very much on various, through the different chapters, the various forms of inequality within the Indian context. Inequality based on caste, gender, religion, ethnic, different parameters, okay? And there were some sections already there which talked about inequality in other democracies. Okay, and there were examples of, many of you must be knowing the civil rights movement in the United States and the Rosa Parks issue in the bus, right? So there were references to that. There were references also to Dr. Ambedkar and drafting of the Indian Constitution. So what I tried to do in the chapter is to show that this issue of inequality is not just a problem. So it's already there in the book. There are examples from other places that inequality is not just an issue in India. There are issues of inequality, but the parameters might be different. The major parameter of inequality in a country like the United States is race. In colonial India also, race was a major issue, as Dr. Petia has shown from the history analysis of the history chapter, right? But in post-colonial India, race has not been that big an issue, whereas it's still a major parameter and issue with regards to inequality in the United States. And also, what I have tried to show over there, it's not just inequality as a concept is global. There are all forms, different kinds of inequality in different contexts, but also this movement for equality around the world, how they have influenced each other. If we talk about global citizenship education in the form of thinking about interconnectivity and interdependence, what I have tried to show there, how the social movements for equality has been interconnected and interdependent. Often we have not been taught to think in that way, but if you really read history carefully, you will see how the civil rights movement was very much influenced by the freedom movement in the former colonies, particularly India and Gandhian philosophy. Martin Luther King was very much influenced by it, right? And at the same time, how Gandhi's himself, all his satyagraha movement, non-cooperation, and the philosophy, it so much grew out of his own experience of apartheid in South Africa. If you talk about Ambedkar and the drafting of the Indian Constitution, how Dr. Ambedkar himself, his education in Columbia University, he was very much influenced by Dewey's Democracy and Education, right? And his own, and the major work, Annihilation of Caste, was part of his master's thesis written at Columbia University, right? So how can we think about these things, that people and ideas have been moving across the borders of nation states, okay, from time immemorial, and how fights for equality, justice, peace, human rights, they have actually influenced each other beyond the boundaries of the nation state. So this is what I have tried to do in the chapter that I have worked on, trying to show how inequality as a concept, it's not just limited to India, it's a global problem, and how this fight for or drive for achieving equality, overcoming inequality, is interdependent and interconnected, and how social movements have influenced each other. So that's my little bit, and we are still working on the draft. It's still in process, and we have two of our own resource persons also part of the panel. Professor Dr. who's newly minted Dr. Deepak Mon here, who joined our IIHEd as assistant professor last semester. Some of you might know, some of you might not know. So Professor Mon's thesis is actually on teacher learning in virtual digital spaces, but he is eagerly agreed to join our handbook team to help review the entire draft document and edit it. Nandita Kaushal sitting over there, I have also invited her. She's not part of the panel today. I invited her to be part of it too, and the editorial team. And Prashant Singh over here, some of you might be knowing him. He's a research fellow at our Jindal Global Law School at the Center for Human Rights Studies. He has actually also contributed as an author, written on the section on human rights and global citizenship. So over to you, Prashant, and then Deepak. Okay, please come.
Okay. So when I was asked by Dr. Mukherjee to write this chapter, I mean, I was also, a little. In my view, I thought it was a very ambitious project, because thinking about concepts like global citizenship in times like these, where a lot of states are going back to their, reviving the whole nationalist debate is reviving in most modern democracies. So I did think that it was very ambitious, but in my, by reflecting on my own personal research focus, I started giving it a thought. And then, what I would come across is today in the world we are faced with issues like the refugee crisis, issues of climate change, which are going to bring us more together than we are right now. So, I mean, as of now, while we may be ambivalent to issues of refugees, because we don't see them very close to us, but in the times to come, due to various political factors or environmental factors, we are going to come across many issues like these. And the current consensus in the world is nobody wants to, entertain any kind of refugee. And also they want to just, do away with their responsibility, do their part in tackling climate change. So when you think about issues like these, and while there are serious challenges on these parts, there are efforts being made to create a consensus that yes, the responsibility has to be shared by all nations. Now, that's where I started thinking about this issue of global citizenship, of who will be the votary for a international covenant which promotes sharing of these responsibilities. So that's how I started thinking about global citizenship. That unless we try to imagine our identities beyond the nation state, and then only we'll be able to relate to a refugee or relate to issues of climate change, which may not actually affect us, but they may be disproportionately affecting the other person. While we may have caused, we may have played our part in causing that kind of a disaster, but we don't want to share the responsibility coming out of it. So that's how I got to thinking about it. And also, as it was mentioned earlier, that the idea of rights which is being currently taught in our school curriculums, it is always taught from a national perspective. So it always flows from the Constitution whenever we hear about rights in our civics lessons. But it is so because the time when the thought process of curriculum making was being done, the international consensus wasn't. People weren't confident about the universal framework. However, a lot has been done on that front. Today, there are, just information, there are 9 core international human rights treaties, and almost 90% of nation states are signatory to all these 9 core treaties. So that shows that we have come a long way since the UDHR. So right now there is a shift towards accepting the universal framework of human rights. So that's why this is the right time probably to shift our focus from the national framework to an international framework of human rights. Because if we remain confined to a nation-centric framework, we deprive ourselves from probably from a better understanding which other nations may have about human rights. So that's how I tried to structure my chapter in it. And so one another very important point that always has been debated in human rights is the universal versus cultural relative perspective. So many nations have tried to oppose a universal framework on the ground that it is alien to their culture. However, this kind of this thought process has taken a back seat now, and because people are trying to realize, because even the West, which always claimed the claim the credit to draft the universal framework, now they have started rethinking about who all have contributed to our current understanding of human rights. So it wasn't just that we all of a sudden we came up with a universal declaration of human rights. It was an outcome of centuries of struggle. Several documents have come during who have contributed into the development of UDHR. It all starts from the Vedic age to the Code of Hammurabi, to the Cyrus Cylinder, to the various edicts of Ashoka. These, the Magna Carta, and then the revolutions of France, the Russian Revolution, and all. So all these milestones contributed to the evolution of human rights, and that's how the UDHR came about. And if these aspects are highlighted in our civics classes, I think that would give a different perspective to a student that the rights that I enjoy today are not the product of whatever my fellow citizens have given it to me. It is because this kind of thought process has come about from around the world, and that's how I should connect with not only just my fellow citizens but just go beyond that as well. So I think these are the broad themes that come about when we try to think about human rights education, and the need to include it in our curriculums. Just to conclude, I would say I try to contribute in this handbook for kind of a selfish reason, actually, because I actually I was considering this as an ambitious project, but I took it to another level, thinking that if in some or the other way it may contribute to creation of if it may contribute to the consensus which is trying to be developed, which is still in the process of being developed, towards creating a broader framework of refugee rights, a broader framework on climate change, I think it would have done its job. So I concluded that, and if there are questions about human rights education, I would be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much for that. And I should once again, and that's why I actually first looked at Nandita before introducing you. Frankly speaking, as I approached Nandita first to write, and Nandita said, "Ma'am, I think there's a better person who can do justice to this chapter better than me," and because he is our research fellow at the Center for Human Rights, and referred me to speak with Prashant. So I need to acknowledge that. Thank you, Prashant. You've done a wonderful job. Thank you. Deepak, over to you. Yes.
Perfectly fine. Good evening, everyone. So I'll start with one question because you all have been silent.
Yes.
When you are thinking in terms of, you are looking at how this development of handbook is going on and what are the perspectives, what are the questions that come to your mind in terms of how feasible this project is, or whatever kind of questions are coming to your mind? I just want to listen to them.
I have a question on this aspect.
Yeah.
So my question is, how feasible is it for a teacher? Like, let's forget about the teachers in NCR region. Let's forget about the teachers in the rest of the schools of the country. But if I talk about the teachers in the interiors of the country, where we are going to reach, where we probably wish to reach, how do you accommodate for the critical thinking of a teacher itself when you talk about this? So we are not, if not, so the question comes because if it's not part of the NCRT book, and it's a different separate set which they have to probably come before, if that's how I'm taking
No.
it.
It's all connected to the NCRT textbooks.
No, connected, but is it a part of the book?
No, it's a separate one.
It's a handbook.
It's a handbook.
So handbook to teach the teachers how they can utilize the existing matter that is there in NCRT
Yes.
textbooks to teach for global
Yes,
citizenship.
so how do we check that they're actually using the handbook to teach?
Thank
and
you.
not going back
It's
to the
it's an
system?
amazing question, which
I think
I would
I should take that question.
let me raise further questions.
After
Yeah.
your presentation, I would like to come back.
Yeah. Anything else? One more. Yeah. Okay.
I would like to basically ask you, what is the purpose of this project and how will it help the masses, meaning the teachers in various institutes? How will it be useful?
Yeah. So another question for Dr. Petia. Yeah. You and then yeah.
So my question is basically how teachers these days are more quantity oriented than quality oriented in the NCERT as far as we can observe. they care more in terms of completion of syllabus within a particular time rather than actually teaching the students something, and as a result the students don't learn anything. So in case you wish to incorporate critical thinking and activities in global citizenship education into your framework, how exactly do you plan to overcome the time constraints that these teachers are bound by?
Last question.
My question is how teachers' language shape the student identities and transform them, and what's the negative and positive points that it can teachers caused by that, and how your handbook is ensures to do this.
So, how teachers' language shapes students' identities. Second is,
And what's the negative and positive points that the teachers can cause it?
negative and positive that the teachers can cause. Okay, okay, good. So these are the. Why did I start with questions? Because while I was given the responsibility to edit this handbook, I was simultaneously working on review. Yes, the handbook. I was simultaneously working on my thesis, which is with the primary school teachers in Gujarat, government primary school teachers in Gujarat, exactly the context that you are talking about. And these very questions, all these questions, which I'll address because I've been writing about these questions as the various speakers spoke about. So the final answer, I don't know what are the final answers, but I have in the review raised several questions. Along with the editing part, I've raised several questions. So one of the questions that is there is the capability of the teachers. Are the teachers, while reading this handbook, the question comes to my mind is, are the teachers capable of delivering this kind of content in the classroom? Why? For several reasons, but two main being their personal histories. Personal histories in terms of their personal lives. As a woman in a household where you are situated in a patriarchal setup, how much freedom you yourself have got to think about these issues, and to their training, which is like we know of the issues of teacher training, pre-service training as well as in-service training. How capable, because we know in Haryana, I know for sure that there are colleges which for 20,000 rupees will allow you to get the degree certificate without even appearing for a exam or sitting through any of the classes. So these issues are critical while looking at this. And this handbook, I don't think it will be able to solve, because it's a part of a larger project and it will not solve these issues. But these issues need to be raised, and these issues are relevant not just for teachers but even for the teacher trainers. I'm questioning the capability of the teacher trainers themselves, because they are part of the same system. They are especially at the diet level, so district institutes or the block level institutions, these people come from the same pool of teachers trained in the same institutions. The second part is another question, like when you ask the structure. When syllabus completion is the holy grail of the school as an institution, that was your question when you said that the focus is on content coverage instead of going deep into the content. That is a huge problem when we talk to the teachers and when they themselves are judged on how much percentage of syllabus has been covered. Going in depth into a single aspect of GCED may require a whole semester, and that may mean that you would go behind on in terms of syllabus completion. So what are the aspects that need to be changed in the structure of the school as an institution? Third, Dr. Moshmi said about, I think, if I'm not wrong, so going from local to global, was it you or? Yeah. So going from local to global, how well are they, because they are embedded in the local context, how well exactly are they understanding these issues at the local level? We have so much diversity. Are they able to tackle these issues within classroom as such as of today? And then how do you graduate to a global level? I'll tackle what issues come in that. Next is the embeddedness of teachers within social structures. when there is an issue like Padmavat, for our friend from Afghanistan, there was a movie released last year in a historical context where there were riots where certain queen was portrayed dancing, and there were issues with that. And teachers in schools could not discuss that or use the songs of that movie during the cultural programs because they were embedded in a social context where that was not acceptable. Two, teachers as individuals have discussed, teachers as professionals. How much power do teachers have? They are at the lowest level in the hierarchy in the education department. How much power do they have to discuss these issues openly, especially when these are in confrontation with the issues at the local level? When you are saying that there is diversity and we need to be inclusive, when the teachers themselves may be excluded if they belong to a certain caste or certain religion, and the students in their classrooms are being discriminated against. A common story in rural schools. Even in we had examples in, I think, a Nazafgarh school in Delhi NCR where such discrimination came up. Third would be connecting it with the present scenario. So what are we trying to build here through this handbook, or in general? So is it the capability, is it giving that much wider content to the students that, okay, let's focus on this global citizenship project? Or key idea is that, so there would be two aspects. One, are the students open to think, say, without any bias, or think openly about such critical questions in the classroom context? So thinking about diverse aspects to asking critical questions, which would be the next step. So one, are they able to hear a different viewpoint from their colleagues, their peers in the classroom, or the teacher? And then next step, are they able to ask critical questions? Because this project will require that. So that is a trouble, because right now, are we prepared for that? Again, no, I'm not very enthusiastic about that aspect right now. Then importance of pedagogical processes was discussed, especially I think Akash discussed this linking of sound and noise. No, you discussed sound and noise to peace. What does that entail? That would require, in my understanding, the teacher herself to be a wide reader, a social science teacher to know and be interested in science as well. Are the teachers interested in that aspect? Two, does the in-service teacher training, which is part of the institutional structure, provide space for that? It's a 20-day training, mandated 20-day training, of which the data says that several of the teachers do not go through that. And two, it is mostly focused on their subject only. So are the structures capable of doing that? And again, there are assumptions. There are huge assumptions about the capabilities of the teachers, about the capabilities of the institutions, about the capabilities of the students. Not capabilities, mostly about the exposure and the abilities of the students to work in that kind of environment. Even the teachers, because of their personal histories. Okay, next, I think one of the key issues that would come up in implementing such a project would be for the teachers and the students and the schools to be sensitive to students, because they come age. Students are not considered as active agents. They are like passive receivers of knowledge. Can they think? That itself is, you are just a kid. You are a child. That's the normal way adults deal with children. Second, gender issues. Very much prominent across India, maybe developed world, if I can say, in the developing world, if I can say that. Caste, religion. So these issues, when you speak of pedagogies, and are you able to bring in participation and analyze that using that rubric? And can you do something about that? When you see that a girl is not speaking, can you do something about? And how much time will it take for you to go beyond your content and then focus on these issues? Okay. Next, I think building,
2 more minutes.
yeah, sure.
We are at the
And
we
yes,
have
yes.
exhausted the time actually.
Yeah. So I'll just conclude.
We will take 10 minutes more time. It's okay for everybody. We'll extend the class time a little.
Okay, so I'll just give the last example where we are expecting the teachers to do certain, to utilize this handbook. That will put a lot of burden on their shoulders because it requires wide reading. I'll take an example, last thing, when you say that Ambedkar and John Dewey's link is there, that requires the teachers to be aware of that link, to read about that, to think about that, and then incorporate.
We are putting that in the handbook.
Yes, so that is just,
It's there in the chapter. That's why we have put it in the chapter.
yeah. So or let me take the final example where you are saying that the science, when it developed in Arabic world, it was built on shoulders of past achievements because a lot of translations happened between Sanskrit to Persian or Prakrit to Persian. Now you need to be aware of that and you need to read about that. That responsibility on whom shoulders it rests. So there is a possibility and there is a need for creating an online community where the teachers, whatever they read, they can put the resources there for others to see and contribute further, because we have limited time in our lives and we have limited resources. The teachers, one of the issues that I find is the teachers are uncomfortable with English in Indian context, which is the language of the internet, and that creates a lot of trouble. Whole lot of issues come up because of that. Hence localization of the content and creation of content to this local context is required. So I think
We are thinking about that, and we are thinking about translating the handbook.
yes. So with that I will close, and these are the issues that have come to my mind and which I have given as comment in the document that I'm trying to review. So several of your questions, I think, I don't know if I have answered them, but at least I have given more, raised more questions. So thank you.
From students, yes.
I think we should start by answering one by one the questions.
We had one
Let
question.
him ask one more question. Yes, Vinny?
Yeah, this is regarding the syllabus structure you have discussed. Sometimes the syllabus structures are decided by political pressure also on the teachers. So this is very prevalent in India. For instance, the Bhagavad Gita issue, where everybody has to read the Gita.
Yeah. So the school structures I talked about.
In some schools it is prevalent, meaning sometimes it can get sensitive to various communities who are.
It is an embedded institution, embedded in the social and the political context. So we need to be aware of that. But that's why I asked this question: are the teachers capable of raising these questions, not just in terms of intellectual capability, but in terms of their social position and position within the organization? Are they capable of raising these questions? Because these are difficult questions that will open up the hornet's nests. Yeah.
One more. Okay, this question is from Mr. Ash. So not related to maths or science, but then I want to ask, like, given the timings that a teacher spends in the school, outside the school, on the students and the personal lives, and as sir had also discussed that they have a personal baggage on their own responsibilities that way. So how do you assure teachers can be a part of a digital world? How do you even assure that? Because I know Google for Education has an online teacher space for teachers from the world over to be a part of it and ask and discuss problems and tell. But I was myself a part of that, and I saw that nobody from the Indian Delhi region was active. And I posed questions so many times that nobody replied till date, and I went to Google to tell them. So
I had a similar experience in my thesis.
So I have a question that when we are assuring that they come digitally online, so can we incentivize something about this project that gets them going? Because at the end of the day, I think teachers in some way or the other really need incentivizing. Yeah, that's my question.
Can
That
I add something this to you? Once again, this is a global problem. Believe me, I have
Yes, I
encountered
also
this
learned that.
problem even in the United States and Australia.
Yes, even Finland for that matter was pointing out to this.
This problem itself is a global problem. Over to you.
All right, so where do I start? Which question should I address first? Capability of the teachers to carry out the GSET that we have developed, right? That was first question. Where did it come from? Precisely this was what you
And,
right?
and,
Yes.
and deeper.
And also, right. So, one thing that NCRT has come up with, it's a very immense responsibility that we are shouldering, believe me. Given the RI Bhopal with the social science community of the four of us, have the entire responsibility to address the need of training the Western region SCRE teachers. First submission. So we have teachers at diet level, and so when we conduct teacher training programs, like in the past 4 years of association with SCRE, I've conducted social science training programs in constructivist pedagogy. Thank you. Constructivist pedagogy, ICT integration, and so forth and so on. NCRT has recently come up with a document which says learning outcomes. When we are teaching a particular topic, what are the learning outcomes that are expected, and what should be the pedagogical processes for that. So our mandate is to handhold SCRTs who are expected to be regularly training their teachers through diet. But we see a very sorry figure with SCRT also, right? Now, as a teacher trainer for the Western region, I have conducted almost, say, 10 to 15 training programs addressing needs of various states like Chhattisgarh, wherein teachers were invited. What was the area that I was training at? I was training them on constructivist pedagogy, which is very close to GSET. I can also put global citizenship as humane citizen, education for humane citizenship. Not this global citizenship is a little misguiding, because global citizens, we do require our passports and visas, and then we do have so many issues of territorial boundaries with China or maybe Pakistan. So what we are trying to address through global citizenship, or I would call humane citizenship education, is extreme nationalism versus nationalism, maybe, right? Now, again, I'll come back to your capability of the teachers to carry out. So as an individual, I can answer. As NCRT, we can answer. And it is not NCRT Bhopal, RI Bhopal. It's all the 5 constituent units and the headquarters, which is very passionately involved in conducting trainings. Last week, 18th to 22nd February, I was hand-holding teachers in Shillong. All the 7 Northeast state teachers were there, a group of 45, and we were talking about constructivist pedagogy in social sciences. And believe me, it is very difficult to talk to Northeast teachers because they open up very gradually. They're very self-confined. So initially, the first day, I was really wondering whether I will be able to connect, whether whatever I'm talking is making sense to them. And I was talking about creative pedagogies. I was talking about critical thinking. I was talking about exactly the same way that I've talked about group discussion, what should be the rubrics. I was talking about assessment in social sciences. I was talking about when you're taking a lesson, what are the objectives or outcomes that you should have in mind.